As new coronavirus cases soar across the United States, prisons and jails are being badly hit. New infections in these institutions have gone up significantly, oftentimes even more than across states as a whole. And the American criminal justice system holds almost 2.3 million people in prisons and jails, which are being highly exposed to this threat. And over 555,000 of them, to give you some perspective here, haven't even been convicted or sentenced. So, how is the U.S. dealing with prison outbreaks? Well, we have Professor Stephen Mulroy joining us to break this down. He's a former federal prosecutor and professor of law at the University of Memphis. So first, talk to us about the numbers in prisons. How many coronavirus cases are we seeing have been diagnosed and are being diagnosed right now in these facilities?
Well, I don't have total numbers nationwide, but I can tell you that the prevalence of COVID infection is much, much higher in prisons and in jails as it is compared to the general population. You know, nursing homes, prisons, and jails are the three highest areas for that. You have reports of it being rampant in some jails. One of them here in Memphis, we have very high rates of recorded infection.
Now, my question for you is why these numbers are so high? What is causing them?
Well, because the main reason is that you can't socially distance in a jail or in a prison. So the main weapon that we have to reduce COVID infection, social distancing, is not available. You're taking people and forcing them to be together in a confined space. Very often they have limited PPE access. And this population also tends to have a higher than normal percentage of underlying medical conditions that make them particularly vulnerable to COVID, according to the CDC.
So what does the government need to do to combat this issue?
Well, it needs to release a lot of these people, first and foremost. The medically vulnerable among that population, particularly those who have not been charged or convicted of a particularly serious crime, so there's no credible argument that they are a danger to the community. We're talking about people here in pretrial detention, often because simply they can't afford to pay cash bail, or they're there on some sort of technical violation of parole or probation. Those types of people need to be released to home confinement, released on their own recognizance, maybe with GPS monitoring or in a halfway house and other setting where social distancing is possible.
Well, I mean, obviously there are the ethical reasons as to why it's so important to stop the spread of this disease in prisons, but what would you say are some of the other reasons that it's so important for the government to tackle this issue right now?
Well, for the very practical reasons that the more people you have packed in these prisons and jails, the harder it is to contain COVID and the more COVID will spread through this population. Now, these are people, particularly in jails, so these are people who have not been convicted of any crime, will be cycling in and out of the population. They will be released eventually, and they'll be taking this COVID infection out into the general population. So for our own sake, as well as theirs, we need to be smarter about this.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. So informative and so important to understand these issues that exist right now within the prison system.